the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
On campus, Tanner Kuhns, is that it? Is that how you pronounce his name? He's also
so.
going to be in.
I'm not positive on him.
Tegan Kuhns?
Tegan Kuhns, excuse me. But there is a Tanner, right? There is a Tanner also in the mix.
Is there a
Tanner Wiggins?
I don't think if guys coming to campus.
No, Wiggins. There's a Jackson Walker. Tanner Wiggins, is that the guy that pitched at Arkansas?
I don't know. I feel like there was a Tanner. Maybe not. Maybe it was a Tegan. I don't know. But either way.
Well, the transfer, right? Tanner.
Yeah.
Franklin.
Isn't there a transfer? Tennessee?
Yeah, Tanner Franklin. Yeah.
But Tanner Franklin. Okay. I knew there was a Tanner.
He wasn't draft eligible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, either way, when you look at who Tennessee got in and how the draft ultimately unfolded for them, was this a big win for Tennessee as a whole? And what were your takeaways from the Major League Baseball draft from Tennessee's perspective, Ryan Schumpert?
I think when you look just at the high school signing class, it was a big win. I don't think everybody's officially signed yet, but looks like it's going to be 3 guys that they'll lose to professional baseball. And when you go in, I think it was 7 guys in the top 200, basically, in the draft prospects rankings, not necessarily mock drafts, but prospect rankings. And for only, that number to end up going, I think it's a pretty big win. And to get the two right-handed arms in Seibert and Kuhns, I think is massive win. So from a high school standpoint, I think it went really well to have a class that's, top 3 nationally and to only lose 3 guys to the draft, I think is really, really good. I think as a whole, I think the Radicek news, not that it's shocking, but certainly a loss, certainly a guy Tennessee wanted to get in. And it felt a little more likely that he would get in compared to Ryan Galani last year from Wofford, or the kid from UConn, the pitcher who's already up in AAA. Reggie Crawford, yeah.
I forgot all about him.
And he's killing it. He's dominating in minor league baseball. Yeah, so that one felt a little more likely than those 2 guys that he would get in. But he obviously goes in the 17th round, ends up signing with the Marlins. It wasn't a shock once he got drafted. I mean, you're talking about a kid that's 23 years old and wants to play professional baseball. So you got your chance. You probably need to run with it. So that's a blow. But overall, I think definitely good. A good draft for Tennessee. I thought where guys that were on the current team that you already knew were going to leave was kind of a win. I thought Christian Moore and Blake Burke both going higher than where they were mocked made a lot of sense. It was kind of one where I'm not an MLB draft scout or an MLB scout, but felt like Christian Moore was a high first round pick, not a mid to late one. And Blake Burke sure as heck didn't seem like a early third round pick to me. So some of that stuff was really good. To have your 1 through 4 in the lineup all go on the first day of the draft, I think was pretty cool and a pretty good recruiting tool. So as a whole, all went pretty well. And from the draft standpoint, or from the high school draft standpoint, I think everything went really well for Tennessee.
What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, echo everything Ryan said. Seibert and Kuhns, big gets. One that didn't get drafted, Levi Clark, kid with a lot of power. Top-ranked offensive signing for Tennessee, catcher, first baseman. I mean, you talk about first base position, and Radicek, of course, getting drafted, signing. I know Dalton Bargo's there, but it's a guy who can compete there. And if you watch the videos, just look up his name on X. There's a couple, and dude rakes. So him coming to campus is a win. But of course, Seibert and Kuhns feel like the headliners of the storylines for freshmen as far as that goes. But yeah, where the current players went in the draft was huge. How many was it in the top 8 rounds? 8, right? 8 in the first 8 rounds.
8 in the first 8, yeah.
8 in the first 8. So that's great. And
that was it too, right? No one went after the 8th round.
Yeah, no one went after that.
Yeah, okay. Current players, right? And it just goes to show what Tony and Tennessee have been able to do the last couple of years.
And I do think one thing I'd just add to that, Jack, that is a good point from a position player standpoint. I mean, the 2 guys Tennessee does lose, Ty Salvacine, my Cubs took him in the 4th round, and then Trey Snyder. Both those guys like middle infielders, and Tennessee had, I think it was 4 middle infielders that were projected to go in the top 200. So that was a position Tennessee had a lot of depth at. And you lose a couple of those guys, but you got a lot of big names on campus at similar positions. So I think if you were pinpointing what guys to lose just from like a breakdown of this class and where you had strengths at, kind of the shortstop position is a spot you had a lot of strengths or a lot of depth. So losing a couple guys there, if you're going to lose somebody anywhere, is probably where you wanted it to be.
I am just I don't think we've ever seen this amount of young freshman arm talent coming onto campus at one time in the Tony Vitello era, right? Like when you look at just how much competition there's going to be in fall and going into the early part of next season, when we talk about like what the rotation is going to look like next year, man, like I don't think any spot is just locked down, right? Like, do we say any of the 3 weekend spots is a guarantee for anybody currently on like coming into next year?
No, I don't think a complete guarantee. But I don't think you really would ever say that if you're not returning any of your weekend starters, not at a school like Tennessee.
I think in most years, like it would just be kind of expected that Nate Snead just automatically slides in, or Dylan Loy's a year older. He would slide in at most schools based on what he did the previous year. But I think it's a little bit different. I mean, the AJ Russell factor, when does he come in? Like that huge unknown there. I don't know. Like how many freshmen does Frank and Tony feel comfortable trusting in the weekend rotation? Like, I don't know. I think that's really fascinating.
You're right about the Snead thing, because it would make sense for him to just automatically be one of the starters. But considering the freshman talent Tennessee has, what they've done in the portal, specifically Liam Doyle, if those guys really hit in the preseason and in fall camp and flash, then maybe Tennessee would have the luxury again to not have to start Nate Snead. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think Snead will be a weekend guy, but you're right in the fact that it's not 100% guarantee, because these other guys could pop and Snead could stay in his role. That could be a reality come next spring.
Yeah, and I would be really surprised if Liam Doyle's not a starter. I mean, I guess he's not just going to be handed that. He's going to have to go earn it. But to me,
Andrew Lindsay came in. He wasn't a guaranteed guy. He had to, things had to kind of go his way. Like, I don't think Tennessee is in the point where they're in a position of strength where they can just be like, look, man, best guys are best 3. And that's what we're doing. Like, I'm just saying that Liam Doyle, just because he's a big time transfer and he started a lot of SEC games, I don't think there's going to be a Tony and Frank and everybody can come in. It's like, no, it's just best man up and whoever performs the best. And like, we're going to rotate, we're going to figure it out. But it's not like a guarantee. It's not like a, hey, when you come in, you've got a weekend spot is all I'm saying. It's like, I don't think Liam Doyle has got that lockdown.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's not going to be handed the spot. He's going to have to go compete and earn it. But to me, it would be pretty shocking if he's not a weekend arm. He's healthy to start the season.
I would agree with that.
And
Snead the same way.
Snead wouldn't be a huge shock to me.
More surprising to me than shocking. And
I think Snead before the draft would have been surprising if he didn't make it in the weekend rotation. I think post draft and post portal, it would not. It would be. It's like a 50. Would you say 50-50 right now, Ryan? That he's a starter?
No,
somewhere around there.
I'd say over 50.
Okay,
like 60-40. We'll say that.
I mean, that only leaves one spot for a bunch of competition for the weekend. Like that leaves one spot with a lot of talent.
And I don't think 60-40 is a lock either. And I don't think just these high school arms are good. I don't think any of them are. You look at them and you pencil any of them in. I mean, it's hard to start as a true freshman in the SEC. I think sometimes.
So who has in the Vitello era? Beam, Tidwell,
Beam, and Burns.
And Tidwell. Burns. Did Tidwell not? I thought Tidwell did, right?
Tidwell did, yeah. Those 3.
Okay, so that's 3.
Yeah. But I think Tennessee's a little bit of an anomaly on that front. Now, I think Tennessee is completely willing to. Like, they're probably more trusting in some of those freshmen. But I mean, I think it's very hard.
I like it. Who is the biggest campus get in your estimation, Ryan, of all the newcomers coming in post draft? Who's the biggest freshman that is going to end up making it to campus?
I think it's probably Seibert. Just because it's hard to see him not having a role. When you throw in the upper 90s and you're 6'8" and you were the highest rated commit or signing in the class, and you probably could have been drafted a lot earlier too if teams thought it was plausible that they were going to sign him. I mean, I think the Tigers just kind of threw a 16-round pick at him and say, all right, let's see if we can undersign some of these guys and throw a ton of money at him. Maybe we'll be able to get him. It didn't seem like he was ever going to. He was always going to go to Tennessee, and he's a 2-year draft eligible guy, so he's going to have to get to work building his draft case early on, I think, for it to truly be worth it for him. So he's the guy that I look at and say I have a hard time seeing him not having a role. I don't know if that's a starter, but when you just look at the stuff that he has, to me, it seems like close to a lock. Maybe not a lock, but it would be surprising to me if he doesn't at least earn a role in the bullpen as a freshman.
Kuhns, same way, right? Draft eligible sophomore. Both these guys are 2-year guys.
How does that work? Can y'all explain this to me like I'm 5?
So they're old for their grade, basically.
But what is old? So what is the cutoff?
Because
like,
if you go to college, you can't go into the draft until you're 21. So most guys, it's 3 years because you'll be 21 after your junior season. No doubt about it. But for some people, like Dylan Dreiling, like Blade Tidwell, like these two guys, they'll already be
Dean
21. Curley. Dean Curley.
Oh, is Dean Curley that too?
Yeah, so this is the last year of Dean Curley, barring something crazy, barring an injury or something like that. But yeah, so it's just they're older for their grade.
That's tough.
This is a big selling point too, in getting a lot of these kids to campus that have, draft prospects as a high schooler. When it's you only got to be here for 2 years instead of 3 years. You come due to college experience, build your draft stock, and you're really not losing that much time when it comes to starting your professional career.
But you see, I mean, the 3 years can be really nice. Blake Burke, Christian Moore, like the longer you're on Tennessee's campus, it hasn't really hurt a lot of guys, I would say.
No, Dylan Dreiling's 2 years went pretty well, I would say.
They went pretty well.
Really
it's really one. He didn't really
year.
play. I mean, he was a little bit in that first year, but yeah.
I mean, when you pop and you have your chance, you take it. That's just the reality.
Yeah. It's a lot to replace. I mean, and we'll put a bow on the baseball front here. So because Tennessee lost the Niagara transfer to the Miami Marlins in the late rounds of the draft, you mentioned him at the top of the show here, Levi Clark, Jack Foster. Is it him? Is it Stone Lawless? Is it Dalton Bargo, who's done well in the Cape? Like, the competition at first base now is wide open. And I think it's one of those where it would have been nice to have the transfer, and I think he probably would have been good, but it's not like Tennessee doesn't have options that could be really, really good in that spot too, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of options. I feel like I'd lean Bargo now just because he's the guy that's been at Tennessee, and Stone Lawless, of course, didn't play last year. Levi Clark's a true freshman, so you lean Bargo now just by default, I think. But there's a ton of options. I think, a couple of the other infielders Tennessee's got in the portal are pretty versatile, and anything can happen really with this loaded infield they got. Radicek kind of doesn't make the waters as muddy since he's gone, but they're still pretty muddy. And Bargo will be in the thick of it. Maybe Lawless and Clark, we'll see. But there's a lot of options for Tennessee, and an embarrassment of riches in the infield right now, which is kind of a little bit new for Tennessee, at least compared to last year.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I think it's one of those where Bargo, I think, Ryan, you and I talked about it either last week or 2 weeks ago, when you're trying to forecast what the lineup's going to look like next year and who from this year's team figures to have an everyday spot locked in going next year. Bargo was still hard to figure out, like where Bargo is going to fit post portal. And now, like, he's maybe the biggest winner post draft for Tennessee. Like, I think that just first base opening up for him specifically, I think is huge for Bargo.
For sure. I mean, it is, but to me, it also isn't from the standpoint he was going to start somewhere.
But where was he going to start? Where was the obvious spot for him?
Left field, first base, third base of Andrew Fisher. They don't think he can play there. I mean, he can play all these spots, and he's going to be one of the best bats in the lineup. It's just a question of where.
Do you think Fisher?
Well, I'm pro Bargo on this program. Jack Foster and I have been long-term Bargo guys. They call us the Bargo boys around Knoxville, Tennessee. But you were about to say something, Jack.
No, I was just gonna. Is Fisher at first a possibility, Ryan? You think?
I'd be very surprised if it's a real possibility. I bet we'll see him out there for an inning or something in the fall. Heck, we saw Jordan Beck play a little bit of third base in the fall, but I don't think that's real. One other name I'll throw out at first base that no one said is Dean Curley. Dean Curley is capable of playing first base. He's played first base this summer for the USA Collegiate National Team. The first time Tony Vitello watched him, he played first base. He can play all 4 spots in the infield. And to me, that's, when you talk about, again, there's going to be just so much, going back to the whole start of the baseball conversation about the competition on the mound. There's going to be so much in the infield. There's so much versatility with so many of these guys that, that's certainly not an option I would rule out either.
Yeah, there's 5 guys, and it's just, how does it work out? I think like Lawless and Clark feels like it's not going to happen. That just would be my prediction. But as far as Bargo, Fisher, Curley, and Ariel, and then Killen, there's 5 guys, and 4 of those guys will probably be starting the infield.
See, I almost find it more fascinating or maybe not fascinating, but bigger question: who starts in left field if Dalton Bargo doesn't start in left field? If Dalton Bargo starts at first base, I do not know who the starting left fielder is at this point.
If Bargo's the first baseman and Fisher's the DH, who starts at left?
Yeah, or even if Fisher's at third and it's Curley and Killen in the middle.
Backus has an opportunity, right?
Yeah, Backus will for sure have opportunities. I think a couple of the newcomers will have opportunities, but there's just no clear proven guy there. Like I look at the infield and I see all the competition that they have, and I'm like, I can see how so many different guys start. The outfield, I mean, you can see how more guys start too, but to me, there's less like clear, concise guys that I have a ton of confidence in.
Well, it's only one position. I feel like Reese and Hunter are locks.
Yeah,
I would just go ahead and lock 100%. Those in. Yeah,
I see what you're saying, Ryan. Where it feels like Bargo starting in left and leaving the other guys to occupy the infield spots almost feels like you're maximizing potential there, especially offensively. Yeah, so at this point right now, before fall camps even started on July 22nd, it feels like that's the reality.
Yeah, whether that be Ariel taking a step with his bat, or Stone Lawless or Levi Clark being able to play first base and being really good with their bats. I mean, there's a number of ways that happens. It just feels like there's more people in the infield. Look, you got the 4 starting infield spots outside of catcher, and I could see 5 maybe 6 guys having real big years there. And in the outfield, if it's not Dalton Bargo in left field, I see 2 guys in center and right that I feel really good about in Hunter Inslee and Reese Chapman, but I'm not sure I see another person that's, again, on July 22nd that I'm like, yeah, I think they could have a huge year that would start in left field.
I mean, but we've seen guys take steps before, so
100%. We would have never guessed Hunter Inslee would have stepped into being a solid starting role 2 years ago.
I mean, you look at Colby's frame and how physical he is, 3rd year in the system. I mean, it could happen. Sure.
And he made major jumps from
it wouldn't shock me at all if Colby figured it out and was good in left field for Tennessee next year. That wouldn't.
And he has a plus glove, and he's a heck of a base runner, great speed. He has all.
I think that's probably what you want if you're Tennessee, right? Checked. Like that's the best case scenario to kind of if Colby just takes that job and runs with it this fall, going into next spring. I think that clears a lot of stuff up for the Tennessee. I think you feel really good at that point.
You don't have to worry about anything in the outfield defensively. Those guys can cover. The whole way.
Maybe Reese Chapman mentally locking it a little bit. That was a concern.
Yeah, but athletically he's a stud. Yeah. So
and I'm
also
sure
just more reps for Reese. That's the whole thing. It's like more reps. Like you just need more reps and right, and all that kind of stuff. But we shall see. We have a lot of time for figuring out who's going to play where. But it's a fun time. It's a good problem to have. Is so much talent that you're not really sure where guys are going to fit. But I think Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson and company are going to.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.